And as we wrapped up our conversation, I'll never forget this. He said he wanted to give me something. Well, he reached into his pocket and he pulled out his hand in a closed fist. And then he took my hand and he acted like he put something in it. And as he did this, he says, "This is your last chance." He goes, "Don't open your hand. Just put it in your pocket and take it with you." He goes, "My prayer for you is that you will never have to see what that last chance looks like."
That was Mike Lindsey, and this is the SHAIR Podcast.
It's time for the SHAIR Recovery Podcast, where we bring you amazing life-changing success stories from addicts and alcoholics all over the world who share their inspiring journey in recovery. And now, here's your host,
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the SHAIR Podcast. And today we have Mike Lindsey joining us on the show. And Mike has all kinds of stuff going on. First of all, Mike is the founder of Airwear Recovery Gear, a clothing line that's dedicated to recovery. And his most recent venture is Unloaded Comedy, Laugh Yourself Clean, a new recovery-based stand-up comedy show where comics share their experience, strength, and hope through comedy by bringing light to dark places and shattering stigmas around addiction. Now, of course, on the show notes, I'm going to have links to his website so you can check out the Airwear Recovery Gear and also links to Unloaded Comedy so you can find out when the next venue is going to be. And the way that Mike typically starts his stand-up act is by saying that he was a homeless meth addict, which already gets the crowd roaring with laughter because Mike currently weighs somewhere in the neighborhood of 350 pounds. So if he's doing meth, he's doing it wrong. The truth is that Mike was a homeless meth addict, and his story is unbelievably heartbreaking. To date, it is the longest episode on the SHAIR Podcast. So folks, bunker down because you absolutely do not want to miss this episode. It's heartbreaking, it's uplifting, it's inspirational, it's unbelievable. So join us now as we dive into Mike's story. But first, if you have not yet rated and reviewed the SHAIR Podcast, please, one of the best ways to help support the show is to go to iTunes, leave us a 5-star rating and a review, and that helps catapult us up the ratings on iTunes, which will make it easier for more and more people to find the SHAIR Podcast. Now, in the past, many of you have asked, how can I help support the show? Well, I'm going to keep it simple for you. First, I want to thank the people who have sent us donations via PayPal. There are a few of you that still continuously send donations on a monthly basis, but we can always use more. So on a weekly basis, I have over 5,000 listeners every week who listen to the SHAIR Podcast. So if 100 of you guys would send me $5 a month, that would completely support the show from beginning to end. So for those of you who have the wherewithal to send me $5 either PayPal or by Patreon, then please feel free to do so. We could really use the support. Also, when you're purchasing stuff on Amazon, there are those of you that are still clicking on the Amazon link on the SHAIR Podcast website before doing their purchases on Amazon. But again, there are thousands of you listening. If each and every one of you could just remember to go to the SHAIR website, click on the Amazon button before you do your shopping, that is also going to make a tremendous difference for us financially. So I haven't been one to emphasize it in the past, right? But now we've got a solid listener base. I know you guys love the show. I know you guys get a lot out of it. There are those of you, just like in the meetings, that are newcomers. The money's tight. Keep listening. The show will always be for free. The SHAIR Podcast private accountability group will always be for free. But for those of you who can, kick in a couple of bucks. Help us out here. And not to forget the SHAIR Podcast private accountability group. Again, it's growing like crazy. Guys, go to the SHAIR Podcast, www.theshairpodcast. Click on the button that says join the Facebook private group. For those of you that are in the private accountability group, you know how vital and important that has become. There's over 1,500 members in there. If you don't want to go to meetings, if you have problems connecting with people, if you need something more than just the podcasts and are not ready to cross over into meetings or some other structured program, then the private accountability group is perfect for you. Jump in there, make comments, ask questions, or just read the posts. There are so many people out there that have the same questions that you have. All you have to do is just read those and then read all the follow-up answers and responses that come. And make sure to subscribe to my weekly newsletter so you know every single time a brand new episode is launched. And of course, if you have any questions, just email me, o@theshairpodcast.com, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. So now a quick message from our sponsors, and then on to the show. Would you like to join a free, anonymous online group that offers a daily topic email with popular recovery resources, accompanied by a secret Facebook group for discussion? Then go to dailyaaemails.com for more information about Transitions Daily. And don't forget to share dailyaaemails.com with friends, in meetings, and with sponsees in recovery. Sober Nation is the largest online recovery community and treatment resource center. They provide treatment resources to those struggling with addiction, as well as to the family members who are caught in the crossfire. On top of that, Sober Nation is a huge community of good people who share their experience with each other. They have informative content, recovery and addiction news, as well as an entire clothing line which helps expand the culture of recovery. They can easily be found at www.sobernation.com. Sober Nation is putting recovery on the map. Hey, Mike, thanks for joining us.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, buddy. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great today.
So it's snowing over there from what you tell me?
Yeah, we got a little snow here in the Oregon. Well, I'm a valley floor, and everybody just loses their mind, I'll tell you.
Yeah, not a lot of snow on the Pacific side, huh?
Not too much. No, until we get it every few years, we'll get a big one. But we'll get a little dusting here, and just people just go insane. So,
all right. Well, we're safe indoors, and we're doing this podcast. So here we go.
Nice.
All right, folks. Well, today we have Mike Lindsey joining us on the SHAIR Podcast. Mike is the founder of AirWear recovery gear. AIR stands for Addicts In Recovery. Take pride in the accomplishment of overcoming addiction. AirWear, get your recovery on. Is that about right, Mike?
Nice. Yeah, I can't say it any better than that.
Excellent. All right, let's do this. Let's get started. All right, so first of all, Mike, before we get into your story, let's talk a little bit about what your daily routine looks like, including recovery.
Okay. My life today is so much different than it used to be, even kind of before I had my difficulties with addiction. Such amazing things are happening. It's truly the gifts of recovery are becoming evident in my life in so many ways. So my day usually starts about 6 a.m. Got a couple small dogs that'll lick my face and talk about accountability partners. It's time to get up. So we go for a short walk. Get ready for the day. Gets my honey and off to work by 8. I'm a cost estimator by trade, and so it's for a retail packaging company. I just basically do like math story problems all day long.
Okay, sounds like fun.
Yeah, it's exciting stuff. I stay connected with recovery almost every day in some form or fashion. Like you mentioned, I am the founder of AIR, Addicts In Recovery. We make AirWear recovery gear. The proceeds from those sales go to benefit local and even national recovery programs.
Nice.
Yeah, thanks. I also like to give back directly to the programs that help me get on my feet, and I'll be talking about those a little bit later. AIR believes in the air of dignity and reclaiming, taking that pride in your accomplishment of reclaiming your life from addiction. And I think the coolest thing I've found lately is that customers are telling me stories how they'll wear their gear outside, out and about in public, and people will come up to them and use it for an icebreaker to start a conversation about recovery. And I think that's just an amazing gift to, be able to open that door for somebody to be able to share, the story and the miracles that we all find in recovery, and maybe help that next addict that's suffering. I have another shiny new venture, if I may.
Go for it.
Thank you. I'm also the founder of Unloaded Comedy.
Okay.
Laugh Yourself Clean is our tagline. And it's a recovery-based stand-up comedy showcase that travels around the country. And my plan is to bring some local comics with me as we go around to these different cities, and we'll also book talent in each city as well. So we have some local flair for that community there to help with that connection and draw the local audience. The goals for this is to have a good time, obviously, share some laughs, and to really celebrate just how far we've all progressed in this journey of recovery. I feel there's a tremendous therapeutic and healing power associated with laughter.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We want to help share that experience, strength, and hope through comedy by bringing light to dark places and, help remove the stigma surrounding addiction, the shame and the guilt, the fear and the loneliness, all that kind of stuff by helping people connect in a positive way. And one of the most unique, positive, direct benefits for each community that we're going to leave an impression with is that unloaded comedy is going to provide an opportunity to plant some seeds wherever we go. And we're doing that by raising money, scholarship money for audience members in recovery to attend local comedy classes. So we'll be having arrangements made in each city with a instructor of a comedy class and, have a drawing. The larger the crowd, the more numbers, we get to scholarship. And the idea is one recovery comic creating another, and the power of multiplying that effort over and over and over, branching out. And then we get to see that seed that's planted. We get to see it grow. The benefits on this, we think, are truly limitless. It offers addicts a method of therapy and a positive way to process their pain. And then we even fill the pipeline with new recovering, comics across the country, and gives us more to draw from as far as the different people we can book. And then also those positive effects are multiplied over and over. So we're pretty excited about this venture.
Dude, that sounds so cool, like unbelievably cool. And how much fun is that? I mean, there's no question about it. Typically speaking, the meetings after the meetings are what have kept me and so many of the people that I know in recovery that I'm close to. It's the meetings after the meetings that have really, really locked in that extended amount of clean time. And what we do is we go out and we eat and we laugh.
Yep.
That's what we do. You eat, you talk, you laugh, and it's this release of all the bullshit that is in our lives.
Yeah.
It just kind of seems to wash away in those moments. So what a great gift it is that you're doing. And so you're teaching people how to be comics.
Yes. When I was in early recovery, I took a class with a local comic. His name's Alex Falcone here in the Portland area. It was a class we took 4 hours every Sunday for, I can't remember, 6 to 8 weeks, possibly. We would show up, learn how to write, something I've always wanted to do, as to become a comic. And, I've always been labeled the funny guy and stuff, and just trying to take that to, situational, with your buddies and, sitting around the table or whatever, taking that to the stage. In my mind, I couldn't wrap my mind around it for some reason. I'd be like, okay, this guy was sitting here, this guy's sitting here, and these guys were talking. Isn't that funny? And so, I had to work on that as far as just changing that format, And so I realized when I was in that class, it's almost like the first crack of shame kind of started lifting. Because he said, talk about you. Tell us about things that happened in your life, and people are going to connect with that. And if you bring up a topic that is, awkward or painful or taboo, the more you talk about that and make light of it, more material you have, and then it gives permission to just continue having that conversation with these people. So it basically quickly turned into, hey, this is a share, and I'm not getting cut off. You know what I mean? It's like, in some respects,
Right?
Yeah. So it's like, okay, I have an audience here. This is class. There's a dozen to 15 of us, and I have this audience. So I remember we played all these little ice-breaking games and improv type stuff. We played 2 truths and a lie, and one of my truths was I was a homeless meth addict. And I know I just ruined the ending, didn't I? I think another one was I went streaking, naked through a football game or something like that or whatever. And nobody believed the homeless meth addict thing. So if you don't know me, I'm a pretty big guy. I'm pushing 350 plus, 6 foot. The Seahawks were calling for an offensive lineman, and I said, well, I'm kind of busy right now. But so to explain to people that I was a meth addict is a little bit
far-fetched.
Yeah, but yeah. You see the look on their eyes, like what? And so,
Can we see some pictures?
yeah, right. Yeah, there's some before and after of two different people. I'll tell you. And I use that for my comedy. And when I showed up the next week and said, "Here it is, this is me," and I could just start, letting that out. Everybody was accepting. Nobody left. Nobody, scooted their chairs away or hid their cell phones or anything like that. They were all accepting, and so it was really amazing experience for me to let that out and let that be the avenue that I heal myself. That's self-therapy.
This is so cool, man. I love it. You're like inspiring me and motivating me all at the same time.
I'm telling you come to the States often?
I go probably once a year to California.
Yeah,
to see my sister.
You holler, and we'll see if we can set something up for real.
Yeah, well, on this aspect, I might have to do a special trip just to go check this out. You know what I mean? Like,
there you go.
It would be cool, man. Like, seriously, I mean, that's my bag.
Yeah, there you go.
So,
there you go.
I mean, I do have a mic in front of me, once a week.
Yep. Yeah. That's true. That's true.
I'm very close.
There you go.
I'm on the precipice of something happening. So, all right, man.
Yep.
Well, listen, we'll get more into this in the end because this all circles around when we get closer to when you got clean and sober. But let's start talking a little bit about your past, what it was like before, how you got started. So, one of my questions, and I haven't asked this one yet, is how do you maintain your spiritual condition, that conscious contact with a higher power on a daily basis?
Well, I looked at this question for a little while and I kind of skipped over it and came back to it. I hear a lot of people talking about that daily time and the quiet time in the evening or the morning or, while they're exercising or yoga or whatever case may be. I can't do yoga. Anyway, I used to be a youth baseball coach. And so I guess I tend to look at my higher power for signs or signals, kind of like a coach would give to his player.
Right.
So I especially look for these signs if I feel like I'm paddling upstream or paddling, seemingly without purpose or direction. So I may not have a lot of conversations per se with my higher power, but I'm definitely look to him for getting, getting that help to getting to the next base, and then all the way around to bring it home, say like an accomplishment or, like a goal or something. And then, then we do it all over again, up to the next at bat and next challenge. So that's kind of how I have that relationship with my higher power.
This is great. I mean, this is out of the box. It's new. I know that I've got plenty of listeners out there that, like yourself, they don't have the usual routines, right? But I'm big on the signals. I'm big on the signs.
Yeah,
they're all around you. It's every day. If you're intuitive or if you're paying attention, these signs are out there. And like you were talking about, there's those moments where you feel as though there's resistance towards something. Something is pushing, you're pushing against something or something is pushing against you. And that's a sign. That's a sign that you need to pay attention to something because your higher power is talking to you. And that's a great way of looking at any challenge, any obstacle, anything that you're going through. And, it's been said, there's a lot of guys out there that do a lot of motivational speaking and a lot of motivational talking. And one of the things that they talk about is, how you look at every situation, all right, determines on, how successful you become. Because we're faced with challenges every day. The people that succeed are the ones that use those challenges, those obstacles as a springboard into what is the universe trying to tell me, instead of, oh my God, I'm doomed. I knew it. This is never going to work. I have to, I quit. Right. So there's absolutely two ways of looking at any given situation. And it's true. Your higher power is talking to you, so just use that. And what we have is something other people don't have. When those obstacles present themselves, we can go to a meeting and share about it.
Yeah.
And when we share about it, when other people listen and they start sharing, we get answers. We get answers all the time, just within the scope of a meeting. Even if nobody says anything, the minute you share about it, stuff starts to move, stuff starts to happen. So for those of you that are listening and, you're having a tough time connecting with the idea of a higher power or having a spiritual routine, look for the signs. They're all around you.
Yeah.
I love it. All right. So tell us, Mike, how much clean time you have and when's your anniversary date?
Well, today I have 27 months and 8 days, and that makes my clean date as of September 1st, 2014.
Awesome. Excellent. And tell us about the first time you drank or used drugs, and more importantly, how did they make you feel?
Well, it all happened in Vegas, and so it's supposed to stay there, and I can't talk about it. So I guess on to the next question, I guess. Those are the rules, right?
I was hoping the comedy was going to come out. Good. You feel free to drop as many of those as you can as we go through this.
All right. Sounds good. Don't tell me twice, No, seriously though, I was 15 when I started using or introduced to drugs. Marijuana was the introduction, and alcohol was just right behind it.
Uh-huh.
I remember feeling nothing, and I thought that felt amazing. Everything was lifted. I felt like I belonged, no longer the kid that didn't fit in. And I was, quickly referred to as the life of the party. People would literally be saying, "Hey, we're having a party this weekend." And then people were like, "Is Lindsey going to be there?" And so it was like, it just made me feel so, amazing. The feeling I didn't have, growing up as a kid is kind of the total opposite. And so it was euphoria. It was fun. And it was without consequence or accountability at that time. And I just did not have any idea that I just decided to take this path, one hell of a path, for the next 30 years. So,
well, what happens is most of us start out with this unbelievable feeling of euphoria and being a part of and self-acceptance and acceptance from others. And it all comes from this magic little moment where we're disconnected from reality, and we've just created our brand new reality until, of course, it turns on us. So, yep. Which is we're gonna get to next. Because Mike, you're all warmed up, so I am now going to turn this story, or actually, I'm going to turn the show over to you. It's time for you to share your story, the battle against drugs and alcohol, the wreckage it caused in your life when you hit rock bottom, and finally, your journey into recovery up until today. So, Mike, take it away, buddy.
All right. Thanks, though. I appreciate that. I grew up in a small town here in Oregon, in the Willamette Valley, about 15 miles or so west of Salem, the capital. And it was a rural town. There's two towns connected. And the town I grew up in was actually dry, which is kind of funny. They made some arrangement with the college that some rich person said, "I will give you money if we keep the town dry." So
really,
they had, and so what they did was they made a road from one town to the other, and they made S curves, and so that was just like a money pit. The cops would just sit there, and everybody coming back from the town that wasn't dry, would not be able to make those S curves very well. So anyway, it was really good city planning. So yeah. So I was adopted at birth, and I knew that I was adopted as early as I can remember. I was an only child. I was a preacher's kid, and I was left-handed. So if I had red hair, I probably would have killed myself. But I actually use that in my bit. But
yeah.
But seriously though, I mentioned those things because each one, left-handed even, each one, kind of came with their own set of issues later in life. Looking back, my adopted parents, they had rather severe mental health issues. My dad like I said, was a pastor. He was also a hoarder.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Way before it was cool. So he was like way before you get on TV and stuff, right? he was so bad that he would, bring people to the Lord on Sunday and then bring them home and they'd stay, kind of thing. So it would, just kidding. But he he was an addict, just in his own way.
Yeah.
If one was good, 1,000 was better in his mind. And our house quickly filled with stuff like stacked floor to ceiling, pathways through the house. You just rode off the garage. Can't even go out there. I joke with people and say, hey, if we had a garage sale, it'd be the garage sale of all garage sales, because we had shit from garage sales for 25-mile radius for the last 15 years.
Oh, dude.
It was crazy. And he even had, check this out, he even had a schedule of all the thrift shops, like when they put out their new gear and their new stuff or whatever. So he'd know on Tuesday he has to hit Goodwill, Wednesday Value Village, Thursday Salvation Army or whatever the case, because I don't know the schedule, but I knew that he did. And so he'd bring home more and more truckloads of stuff. And so it was so embarrassing. I couldn't have friends over. And we lived in a upper middle class neighborhood, I think, at the time. And I couldn't bring friends over, it was just embarrassing. He filled the house, he filled outbuildings, he'd build new outbuildings, outside of code and build more stuff. And with any and all spare time, he would manage that stuff and go get more. It was just a sickness. And soon he even brought like other people's land involved. He'd get friends, and I don't know what kind of club they were in or how he would convince them, but he would use their barns and their buildings and all kinds of stuff. So
to hoard his stuff.
To hoard his stuff. It was, and we're talking
Dude.
we're like, okay, what are we talking here, Mike? Well, if a restaurant went out of business, we would have case after case after case of those little swords that go in the sandwiches, and we'd have all kinds of bricks of cheese and napkins and toilet seat covers, all the things you could think of that would be associated with a restaurant, we would have. And then we go to the garage sales and you just think he backed up the truck and just shoveled it in. I mean, it was just amazing, all the stuff you'd have. As far as my mom, she was a secretary most of my growing up, and I was so fortunate to have her as the athletic director's secretary while I was in high school. That was so awesome. I was so happy to ride with her to school every day.
Man.
Yeah.
You got it on both sides, dude.
Oh yeah, man. That was the classic, don't walk next to me, kind of thing. And it's just, I was a dick, so, but that's, what teenagers do, I guess. But, so again, I'm adopted, so I'm not, related, physically, whatever, so it's, that's a really good way to explain that. But she was bipolar, and pretty severe bipolar, like lithium, like hospitalization, that kind of. And so I really didn't know what was going on with her, but I do know that she was hot and cold, and she would, there would be things going on at the house that, looking back, I don't have a really clear memory of. Like I think, some safety. Some safety measures are taken in my brain to kind of pack some of this stuff away.
Right.
Probably for a good reason. But, when you're poking around in the attic, you kind of wonder what's in that box sometimes. And so I'm kind of feeling in little ways I'm in that attic right now, kind of wondering, what's going on. But I would stay with friends for extended periods of time. I recall that because they were having such issues. In fact, in fifth grade, my mom came and picked me up from school one day, and just out of the blue. And I was like so excited for some reason. And again, it's probably in my mind being safe, helping me out. He's like, "Hey, we're going to Grandma's." I don't know why. All of a sudden, I thought we were going to Grandma's. And I get in this strange car, and there's a strange, other strange ladies in there. And we drive from the small town to the big city of Salem, and end up living in a women's shelter for several months, and then we finally got an apartment, and I ended up going to a new school, and having that whole try to fit in thing again. It was difficult. But a real quick side note about this school: the same school I went to in fifth grade, my daughter is now 25, has a teaching degree, She teaches at that same school. She teaches 5th grade.
Wow.
Yeah. I was like, are you kidding me?
Dude.
I mean, yeah, come on. So, like I said, to this day, I think there's something happened, a little above and beyond just not fitting in and, having a hoarder and a bipolar, exposure and all that kind of stuff. But, some classic signs I think kind of developed a little bit later. But so like I said, I was an only child, spent a lot of time alone. My dad really wasn't participate. The classic was, hey, Dad, you want to come shoot some hoops? And he's like, why don't you go get started and I'll come out. Okay. And for the first, I don't know how many times, 99 times, I was like, okay, he's going to come out. And he never does, And so
disappointment.
Disappointment. And then he'd tell me stories about how when he played basketball, he did this, he did that and stuff. I'm like, well, then come on, kind of thing. Come on. So I'd be out front playing basketball in the driveway. I'd be playing all this make-believe stuff. I had these 2-on-2 tournaments where I'd have Magic Johnson and Abdul-Jabbar against, Barkley and Irving or whoever. I had 2 of the studs from each team kind of thing. And basically I realized I created the video game NBA Jam in my driveway, but I wasn't smart enough to patent it. But it was entertainment for myself. And I would play and hopefully draw the attention of the other kids in my neighborhood, to come down and play, because it got old all the time to go be the guy knocking on the door, kind of thing. And so I'd play full-blown football games in the front yard and baseball and, anything I could dream up, I'd be playing out there. And when I mentioned knocking on the doors, I was the kid that at 6 a.m. in the morning, I would go knock on my buddy's door on a Saturday morning, hey, could Trevor come out and play? And, the parents would be like, obviously I just woke them up. And they're like, no, it's a little early, Mike. So I'm like, so why don't you come back a little bit later?
Yeah,
like,
right.
Okay. Yeah. So, I don't know, 6-7 times around the block on my bike, knock, knock, knock. It's probably maybe 15 minutes that elapsed. They're like, no, Mike, no, come back much later. Okay. All right. And so in the span of 45 minutes, I probably knocked on their door at least twice. And so they're like, the last time they're like, okay, come on in. So they let me in. It was about 6:45 in the morning. They bring me to the kitchen and they fix me up some cereal and they turn on the TV in the living room and I'm there sitting, eating cereal, waiting for my friends to wake up and they go back to bed. I mean, it was crazy. And so just being like that, I would stay out until dark, I didn't want anything to do with my dad. I knew I'd be put to work and I knew he wasn't going to come find me, because he can't even come outside to shoot a hoop. So,
right.
And I quickly noticed by being exposed to other families, I noticed that things were more fun. They were less dysfunctional. I didn't really know what the word dysfunctional was, as a 9-year-old, but I could feel it. Something was different. I noticed they had nicer things. They had a lot fewer things. They had, nicer homes and cars and everything. So I felt, that this gave me a big inferiority complex.
Yep.
And I was just, starting to feel full of shame and embarrassment. And it really became I was an easy target to be picked on over this kind of stuff. It was like the go-to because I try to keep everything else, I'm stunningly handsome. Oh, I'm telling you. And so my looks are on point, they're what they call, was it fleek? Is that what they're saying now? But no, anyway, I would try to keep everything, that front, like most addicts do. And some are better than others as far as keeping, those things hidden and whatnot. So I really developed that sense of humor as my coping mechanism. Like I said, to defend myself, to hide, to get away, and help me fit in. That was a huge. So I couldn't shake that feeling of feeling less than, and I think that's what I mentioned the drugs and alcohol removed from my life. It's that's the benefit that drugs and alcohol gave me before, they slowly took everything away. And I look back, and it's like, if, we all have that, hey, if you had one wish, if you could go back and, if I knew what I know now, if I knew then, or, however the saying goes, if I had that one wish to change one thing about my past, I was trying to get down to that, oh, I wish I would have money. No, that's not it. I wish I, would have, tried this sport, or I wish I would have said yes to this girl, or whatever. Mine comes down to, I wish that feeling of being less than, that inferiority complex, and comparing myself to others so much, I wish that had been removed, or at least, reduced in as far as the power that it has over me, even to this day. It's something I still struggle with. So I think looking back, my addiction started around when I was 9. That's the age that I found a Playboy magazine in my dad's pile of junk in a suitcase and in the garage. And, to be fair, did he know it was there? I don't know. He's a pastor. I don't know. But at the time, it was like confusing. I got a man in the pulpit on Sunday, and then, this other man that's doing all this other stuff, the hoarding and the way he's treating me, and then this. I was, they say that's why PKs, they call them, preacher's kids, they have, tend to have some issues. And I think that's a lot of it. we're
no question about it.
Yeah, we're confused. I mean, it's John Q. Pastor on Sunday cannot possibly be that guy 7 days a week, 24/7.
Right.
And the person that you, as a child, see, the church members in the community, when you see how they see, your father as a reverend, and then you see him through your eyes at home, you're like, what gives? You know what I mean? It's like, what? So I don't know. It's hard to put into words, but it definitely messes with your head, I think, because we're so young. We see it when we're so young. I mean, if you would, expose it to me when I was, 30 or 40, I'd be like, okay, let me wrap my mind around this. But as a kid, it's hard to figure out.
Right.
Trying to put my finger on when addiction truly started. I think that's around the age, because I found this magazine. I'm all excited about it because it's a Playboy.
Yeah.
And, I think it was like a year-end review edition. So it was like a really good one. So I still have it. I still have it. So, no, I don't. But I sure wish I did. No, so so many things happen around that time. The excitement of finding it, the excitement from hiding it, the natural excitement of being exposed to that kind of stuff, and then the shame. All these things are exposing themselves to me. Little did I know at the time about what addiction is to become. Soon after that, sugar was a huge drug, if you will, for me. Mm-hmm. I can remember back, filling the bowl full of cereal, can't eat enough cereal fast enough, go back for more cereal. I love cereal. I mean, they made a Life cereal and said, hey, Mikey, try. And so that was kind of my deal. I ate a lot of Life cereal. Anyway, so overeating as well was a big thing. So those things helped me cope, numb the pain. Then things started to, escalate into shoplifting. Oddly enough, I would shoplift Playboy magazine because, and even, swiping change from my dad, going to the arcade, back in the video arcade days, when that was actually a lot of fun. But, just again, that's something to get lost in, with these other issues I'm talking about, with the inferiority complex and all that kind of stuff, with the addition of, these other addictions, becoming a fat kid really didn't help things. Social anxiety really started in junior high. And I had a bedwetting issue for far too long, as a young boy. So again, something else to feel self-conscious about, spend the night at a friend's house and you're like, oh, I hope tonight's not the night.
Oh, man.
And it more often than not, I mean, it was 50-50, so I was like, wow, I did the best I can, but do the math on that. So, but again, some of these things, it's like, what? We're talking some sexual addiction here. We're talking bedwetting. We're talking anxiety. We're talking, okay, what's happened? What really happened? So that's kind of where I'm at right now with some counseling and stuff like that is, is this a door I want to open? So the social anxiety would make me perspire like crazy. So I'm a fat kid, acne's kicking in, fuck my life at this point. I'm, going through that whole, puberty thing and just, so I wear a coat all the time. I was that kid in school, the fat kid that wore a coat. And I'm just
trying to picture this.
Yeah, it was, I mean, I looked a little bit like a Chris Farley, I think, with his hair all, messed up. And here I am in this coat, fat guy in a little coat type thing. Remember those members only coats? I don't know if you remember those.
I remember those.
Yeah. I would sweat all the way through my whatever I was wearing, through the coat. It just became, and then people would see that and like, dude, and then now people are looking and now it's more and it's worse. And I can't take the coat off because then they'll know that I'm fat because like the coat makes me skinny, right? Nobody could tell. So yeah, that's just all in my mind, and as
totally
a teenager, it's just, so again, humor, trying to deflect all this kind of stuff. Yeah, I'm a train wreck, but look at you. I can verbalize stuff and draw attention off of me and put it back on you. And then finding that people are like, hey, that's pretty funny. He's a pretty funny guy. So that, and then also all this playing ball in the front yard, it kind of helped me get into athletics in school and junior high and then on to high school. And so I was actually a 3-year letterman in basketball and baseball in high school, and we won the state championship my senior year in basketball. So I really had obviously I slimmed down.
Yeah.
So I was the fastest guy on the team. I put in, the hardest amount of work, but again, I never felt as good as, and, looking back, I think a lot of that anxiety that I had really affected my ability to be the player that I was on the practice floor. And so when I get in the games, I was more tentative, I was more, and so I think just all this stuff, really, you can't do, it's like a game of pickup sticks. You can't touch this one without moving that one. And you don't realize these are all connected until, you look back, really. So at age 15, like I mentioned, the pot and the alcohol numbed everything, life of the party. I would, smoke whenever possible before school. I earned the nickname Coma at school because I'd just be kind of literally walking around and not really there. But, little issues here, little issues there, bumps in the road, maybe drunk at a dance and get slapped on the wrist or whatever, but nothing too severe. And so the first real consequence that I encountered, I guess, with, drugs and alcohol was in college. For some reason, when I went to college, I went to one college out of town. Obviously, I get away from my parents. And in school, I was a good student. I was a 3.3 type student, do just enough to get by, not really there to learn as much as I am just to, like I said, get by.
Right.
And not really taking everything I could from it. I was into sports, like I mentioned. I was also into music. All these things, other things I mentioned, I also played tuba.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, I know, right?
It's just your whole life is just like super bad.
Yeah, right. Can I write a script for this? It's even, take away the athletic part, and it's like, what? How this guy even live past 12th grade?
Right.
But it was went to college and I drank myself out in 2 terms. I mean, literally, I had a keg in my room and got busted and didn't go to class. The only class I went to was weightlifting, and treated life like it was like 24/7 was a Saturday night. We would do those, what do they call it with the funnel? I can't even think of what they call it anymore.
Beer bong.
Beer bong. Yeah. Well, that wasn't enough. We had to put jungle juice in it. You know what I mean? So it was like, I don't know how I didn't end up, in a hospital with alcohol poisoning at any point in my life. And that just, got booted out of there and came back to town. And at this point, my parents had gotten divorced. It's almost like they stayed together until I was out of the house, and then they went their separate ways. I had seen my mom for a few years after that, but then I didn't see her I still haven't seen her in 25 years.
What?
23 years. Yeah, I haven't seen her. She got remarried and moved away. I got, booted out of college, came back to Salem, and just tried to survive. I had to find a job, go back to my old high school day summer job on the farm. I'd ride, 15 miles to work all day on a farm, and then ride back. I was in great shape, but it was brutal. And so then, I would start the gamut of drugs at this point. Alcohol and pot wasn't enough. I had to move on to the crank back in the day. Started with mushrooms and acid, and then all of them at the same time, and all kinds of stuff. Even tried some of the IV stuff at that point. I realized I loved the numbing stuff, but the go was that's what I was about. I mean, it was let's go, kind of thing. And I think that looking back, that I've been diagnosed with manic depression and bipolar 2 disorder.
Right.
And so I kind of live in that lower range a lot. And it would manifest itself by, I can't get out of bed for 2 days. I can't get out of bed for 3 days. I got to make up excuses to why I'm missing work. And I had a book of excuses. I mean, I had some good stuff. I even used an intervention once that we had to intervention for a family member, and I needed to be there to help, facilitate. So, I mean, these excuses were, out there. And oddly enough, I probably needed the intervention more than anyone.
Right.
So, yeah. So I self-medicated for years, before I even was diagnosed. And we're talking, we already mentioned the drugs and the alcohol. There's also gambling. Sex became a huge deal. And we're talking, not just, back in the day it was phone sex, and, then it got to the internet and all that kind of stuff. That wasn't good enough. I had to go and find, prostitutes and, other relationships. And when any of these things got too hot in my life, the fire got too warm, I'd switch,
Switch addiction. Yeah.
Switch addiction. Yeah. If someone's, sniffing too hard over here, I'm like, oh, okay, we're going to back off of that. And I'm going to overeat for a little while, or I'm going to, I can drink all weekend. I'll be just fine. And I'm going to put the Coke down, because I'm spending too much money, kind of thing, or whatever. And eventually I think I even got addicted just to the chaos. I mean, I would literally self-sabotage myself and the family, and then be a hero and fix it all and do it all over again, And so it's like, I don't know, I kept unplugging stuff just randomly. Hey, look, I just took the power out and plug it back in. And then, I don't know what it was, why I would do that, but that's what I did. So kind of fast forwarding to, I was married for 22 years. I have a daughter who's 25 now and a son who's 20, and he's in college. I mentioned she's a teacher. She graduated college. Great kids. I mean, I could not be more blessed as a father to have kids, like them. Sometimes I feel like I don't deserve them in my life, but like most addicts, I don't like using all terms like that, but most addicts are good people.
Yeah.
We've done good things. We've, you hear the term functioning addict, and I never really thought I was a functioning addict, but I think I was pretty classic. The more I talk about it and delve into this, I started with, some real warehouse, hands-on box tossing jobs, and eventually worked my way up through warehouse management, cost accounting, business analyst roles, financial operations analyst, and now I'm a cost estimator. I didn't go to college for this stuff. It was all on the job learning. So, I mean, I look back at the gifts that I was given, some intelligence, some charisma, some, wonderful family, all these things, but it wasn't enough. I didn't cherish that. I had to feed the beast that I hadn't realized was taking over my life, because like that switching addiction, I never really hit a rock bottom. Did I embarrass myself at a public event? Maybe. Did I create, a real issue with my wife at home? Definitely. Did I embarrass the kids? More than likely. Did I, all these things? Did I miss work? Yes. Did I lose a job because of this or that? Well, maybe not. There was always these gray areas. There's always somebody swooping in to fix things. And so I never really touched that rock bottom. And so a few events occurred. I was more and more unhappy. The addictions were out of control. I would literally, sex addiction was so bad that I would have to launder money to be able to afford my habit. And I did this through metal recycling. So I'd be working a professional job as a cost accountant during the day, and I had a pickup truck, and I'd be getting online and seeing on Craigslist where people were giving away metal. And then I would, there's 5 metal desks. I'm going to go get it. So I went and leave work just randomly and go get these desks, take them down to the metal place, get my money, and then come back to work. And then from there, it was, okay, now I got enough for Mercedes or for whatever her name was, whoever. So that was part of the addiction, was to come up with that money. Another part of the addiction was the thrill of shopping, if you will, for a prostitute. Then there was the whole thrill of meeting them. Am I going to get in trouble? Am I going to get arrested? Is there going to be a cop on the other side of that door? And then, of course, the act itself, which oddly enough was the lesser of all of those as far as excitement goes. But I really haven't shared that with anybody before. So it's yeah. So
well, that's part of the sex addiction is. It goes hand in hand with the drug addiction and the alcohol abuse and everything. It's all part of the chemistry, right? You do it all. And then, like you were saying, either the porn addiction or the shopping for a prostitute, that kind of thing, there's an anxiety buildup that happens prior to the act itself, right? That's the adrenaline rush of, you're going to go meet. How's it going to go down, and am I going to get into trouble? Yeah, the whole, there's a rush behind that.
Definitely.
That's humongous.
Yeah, and then I think too, then that addiction is something else, because you get into stuff, like that, you get double shame cards for that. You know what I mean? It's like internally anyway, I'm thinking that's, okay, I can tell people that I have a few too many drinks time to time. That's acceptable. I can tell people that I tend to eat 2 or 3 extra pieces of pizza more than I should. That's acceptable. Maybe I tried cocaine once or twice. That's, kind of acceptable. But no, I went and I scraped up metal to get cash to go shop for a hooker, and then proceeded to meet her, and, all this while I'm in a married relationship. And so, that is where this extra shame and guilt and all this kind of stuff comes. And so now I'm killing myself inside even more. So I'm like, in and out of counseling and on and off of meds to try to deal with this bipolar depression that's kind of, kicking my butt. And it's just all a double diagnosis horror story. And I'm falling, becoming less happy in my relationship with my wife. And because she's doing everything she can to keep things together. And little did I know that she was classic codependent, classic enabling, not letting me hit that rock bottom. It was trying to keep everything afloat. And, I was hell bent on sinking it. And so finally, I had the balls enough to say, I want separation, and so I got my own place, and things, kind of went okay for a little while. And then it just tanked. I mean, the emotions of trying to keep a relationship with the kids, and, them not happy with me out of the house and all this kind of stuff. And I was coaching my son's team, and it just, so much emotion being tugged every which way all the time. And then my dad made a phone call, and it was the weirdest phone call I've ever heard anybody say. He said, Obama is coming to to town to speak at the college, and he wants to award my dad with an award for his invention. And I was like, wow, okay. This is pretty random. All right. And then he called like 3 minutes later and said similar story, but different. And then from a different angle, and then said stuff about the banks and they're trying to take this from him and all this kind of stuff. Okay. And then he called a third time, and everything was like, it's like a snow globe. He's like, he'd tell the story and he'd shake it all up, call back, tell the story again. Everything was different in different places, but the same stuff. It was really weird. So I called 911, and I was 20 miles away. I said, hey, this is a scenario. I'm coming out there. Can you send someone out to check on him? And by the time I got there, the paramedics had come and gone. He'd kicked him off the property. Long story short on that one, I ended up putting him in a psychiatric ward, and he then went to a assisted living, and he's still there today. And my timeline is so bad. It was 5 years ago, I think, but that was a lot of stress. So I was in the relationship with, quote unquote, the other woman, separated from my wife. That's kind of how we got separated, was the finding out of this relationship, and it just kind of helped launch, because I didn't have the balls to say I want out. I just did things to make it happen. So all these things were going on. The emotion of I was the guardian and the conservator, so I had to manage him, manage the money. I had to work. I had to, keep up my addictions. I had to do all these things. And part of the job was to come back to the house, his house, my house I grew up in, and go through all that shit. And at this point, this shit was on TV. I probably should have called and said, hey, check this out. Look what I got to deal with. And it was, I had to literally wear a mask in the house to start cleaning it up. But the addict in me was, okay, let's take some of this metal and
sell it.
What I mean? Sell it. And so that's the first thing I thought of, to not this time to do, the previous, but to try to help pay the I had to get the electricity back on. There's all these people. He had homeless people living in the backyard that I now realize were, high as fuck, that was stealing all his shit, and then he's paying them all day long. So you could go to the mission and pick up these guys, and they're like, hey, it was like a win-win for them. They'd go get stuff they could pocket and sell, and then he would pay him to do it. So he ran out of money, and that's what he called about, was like the bank won't give him money and they're all mad at him and all this kind of stuff, is because he kept getting all these loans. He wasn't mentally good. So that weighed on me way more than I thought it ever would, because of our relationship. I'm not making excuses any means, but I'm just kind of painting that picture of how the downward spiral became quite so quick here towards the end. So I got laid off at this job I had for a long time. I really liked. Nothing I could have done. It was the whole department got lopped off, and so I have unemployment, kind of doing my own thing, umpiring during the summer, and I got a little bit of a severance package and stuff. And so rather than using that to springboard me into something positive, I just got by, did what I wanted to do, and then I picked up a job when I had to, when the money ran out. Same kind of thing. The job ended. It was a temp job, not my fault. It just happened. But this time, I ran into met a gal, and she introduced me to Chrystal, Chrystal Meth.
Mm-hmm.
And remember I mentioned the Go earlier. Love that. Yeah, love this. And tried it all different ways to start. And then eventually, I remember, like it was yesterday, I was like, hey, I think I'm ready to, to do this IV. And this guy that I guess running with or hanging out with or whatever, I remember him, just like yesterday, said, well, be prepared to lose everything. And I was like, whatever. And wow, he wasn't wrong by any means. And it It did not take long. I was in a studio apartment in the basement of an old house, and there was a couple that rented up above me, and it was a nicer, not a fancy, nice old house, but it was decent shape. And the studio was so cool down below, really cool setup. You had to enter through the back, so you had to kind of go down along the side of the house. Well, it was in a neighborhood in Salem that's a little rough and referred to as felony flats and all this kind of stuff. So eventually, here I am on meth and all this kind of stuff. Eventually, I opened my house to the neighborhood, and oh my gosh, the people that would come and hang out. I had 17 people in this little studio, all these meth and heroin addicts, and who knows what stuff's getting ripped off. I can't even keep track of it anymore, but there's people here, you know what I mean? It's great. I can get high. That's awesome. And so this went on for about 6 months. I got evicted. I tell people, where do you live? I live at F-150 Ford Lane, and they quickly realized that was my truck. One night, I mean, I could break it down into all these, crazy stories every night, but it's, the point is, I ended up losing my truck. It got towed, and honestly, it's probably the best thing that happened, because I would have gotten pulled over for DUI eventually. I mean, I tried my hardest to get pulled over, and I never did. I don't know why. So now I'm on foot. I'm homeless, and it's rough. It is that sinking feeling of, hey, we're hanging out. All right. Da, 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 da. And then it's like, oh my gosh, it's like 7 o'clock. It's getting to be 8 o'clock. It's where the hell am I going? I know I can't stay here. I know that, but where am I going to go? So it turned into walking the streets at night, sleeping during the day. And I wasn't good at this at all. I mean, I was not good at this. There's one day I was up all night and I crashed during the day in a park, and I woke up, and apparently when I went to sleep, it was shady. But when I woke up, I'd been in the sun all day, and I sunburned my face and my eyelids. And I remember, well, what the hell? Why does it hurt so bad? And I went and looked in the mirror, and I was just a lobster. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so, I mean, that's just one little tiny thing about the things that I did not know about all this. And I call it the game, and it just chewed me up and spit me out, but I still want to get high. So I ended up traveling from town to town. I left Salem to go to this party that I'd set up at a hotel. And I literally left everything that I own at the dope man's house. I mean, I had left a bunch of stuff at one point with another guy, and I wasn't going back. And this time I left, I mean, we're talking everything, Omar. We're talking kids' pictures. We're talking any kind of, memory type thing. We're talking my high school baseball jersey, my high school Letterman's jacket with the state championship patch and the medals. I had a bicycle and golf clubs, and anything and everything was gone. I had a backpack full of clothes, and that was it. And I was like that for a year. And I went from town to town, and it got pretty bad. I mean, I was sleeping some places. If I took you through Salem and pointed out places that I would sleep, people would be like, no way. Yeah, I was right there. And I remember I talked this one guy, a friend of mine, into paying for a night at the hotel. I still can't believe he did it, but he actually came down to the hotel in another town and showed up and knocked on the door and was like, hey, I'm like, oh, whoa. There's a party going on in here. You don't want to be in there. But got to talking to him. I was like, hey, man, I'm riding my bike around Salem all the time, and nobody even, recognizes me. And he's like, dude, if I saw you on the sidewalk next to me, I couldn't recognize you. I lost 150 pounds. And I was not, my son didn't even recognize me when he had seen me.
Oh, man.
It was crazy. So I went to treatment. Try to get to the end of this thing. My daughter and my ex-wife helped me get into detox. And it took me 2 different times to get in. I got into detox, then I left. I went back to their house. They let me stay. And then, for a day or two, then I said, I'm done with this, and went back out. Then about 6 months later, we'll try this again. They got me into detox. And this time, I didn't have any insurance, but my daughter scratched and clawed and made phone calls after phone call. And they say it takes 45 days to get the Obamacare. Here it's called Oregon Health Plan. And she got it in 3 days. for me, and which was amazing. She was fighting for me, and I was doing, mostly what it takes to make this happen. They got me into a treatment center out of town, a couple hours out of town, and went there, and I was there for almost 30 days. They had actually come up a couple times for the family part, the family meetings, and they were going to come up on a Saturday for another one. But on that Thursday, I got kicked out because I had what they call relationship building. It was a co-ed place, and that's the kind way of saying that, hooked up with somebody. So then that's a huge gossip thing. It just turned into like a miniature high school. It was really weird. But anyway, so we got busted, kicked out. And so then I was like, what am I going to do? Oh my gosh, I'm back on the streets again. And so, back to the old game, okay, what can I do? How do I get high? What do I ended up, I was in Beaverton for a little while, and I went out to the Dalles, try to follow a party out to and then I ended up in the Dalles with the same gal that I was with, and no place to go. This party thing never really happened. Now I'm homeless in the Dalles, and I don't know anybody. Well, I'm literally flying a sign to get money. And depending on how much money I get would determine what I'm doing that night. Am I going to eat tonight, or am I going to, get enough for dope and get high?
Right. And
more often than not, I would get enough money to get high, and just kept doing that. And finally, this gal and I tried to, maintain this relationship in these circumstances with drugs and everything. And we ended up back in her hometown. It's going to floor you, but things didn't work out. I know, right? We had such a
can't believe it
promising future. Yeah, the way we were going. And so one day I was just like, you know what? That's her town. So she found places for her to land. I didn't have any place to land. And so I'm getting, woken up by the cops in the park. Fortunately, I didn't have a record. So it was like, I was able to say, oh yeah, times are tough, I'm passing through, kind of thing. And I hung out at a local bar, and they kind of adopted me like a stray puppy, literally. And I remember one of the bartenders, she took me home for a couple of weeks, actually. The plan was for one night, but I have such charisma that it turned into 2 weeks. No, she's still a good friend today, and I'm very grateful for that time to allow me to kind of start clearing some cobwebs, because there was no using while I was there. And so, but 2 weeks is the longest I could stay. And so then I'm back on the streets and back to using. And I'm in this situation where I'm in a small 1-bedroom apartment with this lady that lives there, and she's using all the time, the meth, and she's just literally insane. I mean, she really is. There's something, wrong with her above and beyond the meth. And
right.
And so when I saw myself, under her couch, finding, rock after rock after rock that she'd spilled, kind of thing, I wasn't carpet, what do they call it? Carpet farming, I guess you call it, or something. But it's, I could not believe the amount that I found under there. But at some point I was like, you know what? This isn't working. The sign flying this wasn't the right town for that. So I wasn't making a whole lot of money. Things were not going well. So I decided, I mentioned I had some professional experience in my work history. I started to go to the library, the public library, kind of as a place just to kick it. It was really hot, and the library had air conditioning, and I could also go into the restroom. I had like an extra large restroom. I could go in there and freshen up, if you will. And so I started to work on my resume and sent it out, and I started to get some replies. And most of it was through temporary accounting agencies, cost accounting positions. And I noticed that each and every time that I would take a step forward, start reclaiming things, I would be met halfway with an opportunity or some kind of like a sign, like we mentioned. So I ended up getting an interview, and the interview wasn't going to happen for a week because this gal was going on vacation. I was like, okay, so I had a week to get, myself up and out of this town down to Salem or some other situation. And so I put an ad on Craigslist, said, hey, I need a interview clothes for an interview. Kind of told my story a little bit, left the drugs out, of course, but just, times are hard, blah, blah, blah. And I got a reply from this nice couple, and they met me, and they brought 2 huge boxes of clothes and a big bag of toiletries. And I remember the cologne was all funky, but it was a lot less funky than I was. So I was really happy to smell like something different. But, and again, I'm still in contact with these people today, albeit, an email, quarterly email or whatever, just kind of checking in type thing. But it's just amazing that these people came to be in my life. And so I took, probably half of what they gave me, as far as what fit and all that kind of stuff. And I needed to get to Salem. And I was actually going to use Detox as a hotel because I knew I've stayed there twice for 5 days. I knew that I could do it again. And I made arrangements to do that. But I could not, for whatever reason, I could not get from A to B. I was trying, couldn't get a ride. Tried Craigslist for a ride. This was before Uber. I didn't have any money, but so I started hitchhiking. One day I was okay, and of course it's the day this is raining like crazy. Some dude takes me from Scappoose to Tigard and drops me off, and I can't get to where I need to get. I call a buddy of mine and said, "Hey, dude, here's the deal." He's like, "Okay, I'll come get you, but what's your backup plan?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't need one. They're gonna let me in." So we get down to Salem, call the place the next day. And they're like, "Well, when did you use last?" I'm like, "Oh, it's been, 3 days." And they're like, "Oh, you don't need Detox anymore." I'm like, "Oh, didn't think that one through." So, yeah. So he and his wife, his son went to high school with my son. They played baseball together. We were always friends, not long time friends, but just through, several years at that point. They took a chance and let me stay. They said this is the deal. You have to, keep showing progress and efforts to get yourself into a homeless shelter. I was like, okay, I'm ready to, I've decided at this point that we're making the change. You know what I mean? So we're starting to get that mindset of this is part of the deal. You know what I mean? Okay, that's the hurdle. Okay, well, let's take it on. And so every day going down to this homeless shelter, first thing in the morning, lining up. How many beds are there? We don't know. We don't know how many beds there'll be, but we know they're making more. Literally, the prison was making bunk beds for this place, these heavy duty, fancy beds. It was all over the news locally and stuff. It's a pretty cool deal, but we don't know when they're going to be ready. So, okay. So every day, nope. Or you go there and there's 2 beds and I'm like the 4th in line. It's like, go down there. You're first in line, nothing. It's like, oh my gosh, finally got a bed. And then it got these interviews rolling. And so I had an interview at the Coast for this senior cost accountant position. And I had another interview in Vancouver for a cost accountant position. And I'm zeroing in on this one at the Coast. This is the one that I was talking with at the library. I mean, I'm lining everything up for this. This is big. This is the biggest money I've ever made in my life, kind of big. And so I went from, how am I going to get from, Scappoose to Salem to, hey, how much does a condo cost at the Coast, kind of thing. And yeah, I really needed to be doing that. And so I got the clothes, I got the tie, I got everything. Okay, we got to get there. We get all the way to the Coast. My buddy takes me and, I go in for the interview, everything. I'm nailing it. There's like 8 people, literally 8 people in there they're going around the horn asking me these questions. And it's all about, changing an old culture into a new culture. And it's a lot of stuff that I did in my previous job and kind of how I'm a real people person and I can, relate to them and blah, 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 all this stuff. What about ERP systems? What do you know? I know this and know that. Blah, blah. Okay, that's great. And then because I don't have a degree in accounting, they felt they needed to go around the table and ask specific accounting questions, like explain to me the difference between a variable and a fixed cost and stuff that I know, right? Well, during this process, there's several higher power moments, and this is definitely the biggest one that resonates me at this point. I swear to this day that someone kinked my hose or pulled the plug or something, because this is all wheelhouse stuff for me and, kind of textbook answers. And I literally just, like a Fred Flintstone or something, I just, I was like,
it froze up.
I mean, and I started just spewing rhetoric and mumbo jumbo, and you could see the looks on their faces, as we went around. It's like, wrong. And all 8 questions, I may have got one or two half right. And so then, stood up and I tried to save face. Oh, thanks for the interview, blah, blah, blah. And, kind of went up to shake hands and stuff. And everybody's like, well, this was a waste of time, kind of thing. I'm like, oh, you can just tell on their faces. And so it turns out I didn't get the job. I was at the homeless shelter. I got the call on a Tuesday that I did not get the job. I was really, really bummed. I thought this was my opportunity. Thought about using. Here I am in this homeless shelter. I mean, I'm like one step away from the bottom again. I mean, it really set me back. And so, but I did not act on it. So Tuesday, nothing. I didn't act. Wednesday, I didn't act on it. Thursday, I get a phone call from this other job that I had interviewed for in Vancouver. And they said they want you to come. It was really weird because I went to the interview and then I heard nothing from them. And then not until 2 days after I bombed the other one or found out I didn't get it, they called Thursday and said, we'd like you to start Monday. And I'm like, okay, next Monday? Like, no, this coming Monday. Oh, okay. Well, that was in Vancouver, Washington. I was in a homeless shelter in Salem, Oregon.
Oh, dude.
That's 60 miles away. There's no way I can make that commute. I mean, maybe if I got high, but, maybe like once or twice. Anyway, what had happened was, at this point, I'm like, you know what? Let's do it. Let's make this happen. I was mentally prepared to wash my junk in a McDonald's bathroom sink for 2 weeks to make this happen until I got a paycheck to get a place to live. You know what I mean? I mean, I was like, we're making this happen.
Desperate.
Yeah, desperate. Yeah, it was desperate and determined, And then my higher power is like, you know what? In my mind, this is what he said. This obstacle, this hurdle, this challenge, this failed, effort for this job at the coast. I was testing you for that. If you had gone out and acted on your, woe is me, let's get high again type thing, maybe I wouldn't have got that call on Thursday. But I stayed clean. I pouted, licked my wounds, and said, okay, let's regroup. And then boom, got that call. And so then things start really falling into place. My buddy again takes me to Vancouver, and as I was leaving the shelter that morning, I'll remember it. I mean, a lot of these things just really stick out. One of the dudes that I ran with for a period of time, it was still dark, and he rode his bike by. It was cold in the morning. It was September, and he rode his bike right in front of the homeless shelter, no shirt on, 6 a.m, just, fast as he could go. And I remember seeing him go by like, okay, that's the last, reminder I needed that I'm doing the right thing here, it's like, it was almost like the cavalry comes through town, again. It's like the retired soldier's like, hey, I could go one more time, it's like, no, And so I went up there. The interview was on a Sunday. So I had made arrangements for interview in an Oxford house on Sunday morning. And their meeting was at 8:30. And so I'm like, okay. So I went up there, interviewed, and I remember, they said, we'll discuss it. We have other people to interview. Call us back at like 11:30 and make sure you go schedule other interviews for other Oxford houses because you don't get this one. And so I was like, okay. So I interviewed and I thought it went pretty well. As I was leaving, other dudes were coming in, and then they were like, hey, dude, oh, hey, they knew each other and stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. There's no way I'm going to get it. So I went to McDonald's, kind of kicked around. I called a homeless shelter in Vancouver, and it turns out that they were 8 miles from where my job was.
Oh.
I was like, okay, yeah. So I was like, all right, okay, let's. And then I called another Oxford house to set up an interview that evening, and they were 7 miles away. I'm like, okay, all right. Okay, well, these are the cards, okay, there's buses, let's figure this out. I don't know if I mentioned, I didn't have any money at this time. So I went up there with, nothing. I called the original Oxford house that I interviewed at 11:30, and they said, I got it. And so I was like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. When can I move in? If you can move in right now. Okay, so went to the house. Turns out it was 1 mile from where I worked.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
You could walk.
Yeah, I did the first day, and so I realized that they actually had mountain bikes and stuff in the garage. But so yeah, that was totally a God thing. I mean, I tell you what, that was of all the places, Vancouver is a pretty good sized town. I mean, it's Portland, Vancouver. The community is huge, total God shot. And then I went to I was like, okay, I'm here. I got my stuff. I don't have any food. What am I going to do? And so we went around to some churches, and I got 2 weeks worth of food. And I say it's 2 weeks because the last day I was eating oatmeal and lentils. And so, I mean, it was 2 weeks worth of food all the way down to the end. And then when I got paid, I made my agreements, because they let me in on good faith, because I had a job and I was, in a program, going to meetings and stuff like that. So it was, so that was the beginning of the beginning, if you will. Nowadays, I stayed at the Oxford House for about 9 months. I met a gal at 60 days. We're still together. I know they say that you're not really supposed to do that early in recovery. I think that's just kind of in my makeup that I needed to partner up with somebody. And it's been a really positive relationship. It just doesn't enable me whatsoever. We're able to be honest with each other, very loving and great communication, and just exactly what I needed. And I think vice versa. I think I told her day one, this is me, this is my past, this is where I'm going. And she basically said, you're the most handsome man I've ever seen in my life. See, we're back to that again. It always comes back to that. But no, she decided, hey, if you keep, proving that you're doing what you say you're going to do, I'll give you a shot. And, it's pretty much what happened. And a couple bumps in the road, but nothing major. And, she's been very supportive, and we have a great relationship. So, that's the story. But that's the Reader's Digest version. Like, yeah, right. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of what got me to where I am today.
Dude, the craziest part of all this is like you're literally a meth head, homeless meth head. This is like one of those true Hollywood stories where the guy's in a car and he goes to the interview, he doesn't get the interview, and there's that moment where I could go get high, but I do the next right thing and the phone rings. And and then there's that special music,
yeah, right.
You got the job, And it's like, holy shit. The truth is stranger than fiction kind of a deal, where it's like so unbelievable.
Definitely. It's I can't even, talk about having material. You know what I mean? It's almost like an endless stream of material once I'm able to massage it and I can't say tweak it, but able to massage it into something that's funny, and so it's very therapeutic that way.
So we get to the story. There's the happy ending because when you got the job, you had how much time?
Oh yeah, there you go. That's a good point. When I got the job, I was the day I started working, I was 3 weeks clean.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And so. Thanks for mentioning this. It's kind of a little bit left to the story. I 3 weeks clean, and here I am sitting at a desk in a cost accounting role, and just trying to clear cobwebs and trying to put my life back together and trying to be compartmentalized. That okay, here I am for 8 hours a day. I need to think about this, and then because I hadn't been doing any of that. I'd been just wherever I wanted to be, whenever I living in a garage or on the streets or whatever else. And so now I'm, have to be kind of a, focused professional individual. And it was tough. Always been fairly good with numbers, but I always have had some issues with, some of the bipolar depression and, all this kind of stuff. And so this job lasted 2 months. They said, we need to let you go. They're kind of looking for more of a GL accountant than a cost accountant. I was like, okay. But this job got me out of Salem. I was able to get a car through this. It got me a roof over my head. It presented some amazing opportunities. Then, right after that, the higher power wasn't done. He's like, okay, some of the networking I had done previously in my professional life paid off, and I was able to get a financial operations analyst position through another company that wasn't too far away. And thank goodness I had the car at that point. And so I got that job, and it was a little above my mental capacity at the time. I mean, I could wrap my mind around most of it, but just collectively, I think it was too much. And, but I met some great people there, and we're still friends to this day. It got to the point between my depression and, all this kind of stuff that some of these things that had gone on in my life started to rear their ugly head. And it's like, you know what? I've made the decision now that I'm in recovery to clean up, the sex issues, the philandering, the gambling, let's go actively find a solution for my mental health. I have sleep apnea. I don't have a machine. I got on Craigslist and called around and all this kind of stuff. And another godshot, one of the guys that lives there at the house, his mom happens to own a sleep apnea company. And I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
And so these things just kept happening and kept happening. Oh, I tell you, it was crazy. But I, actively took, action. And there's things that kept occurring, like, hey, you can't keep this job unless you get your license or get some kind of an ID or fill out this I-9 or whatever it's called. And so I had to go get, birth certificate and social security cards and, get my ID down to downtown Portland to get this thing signed and all this kind of stuff. And, it was, one thing after another that I needed to take care of. To get my mental health taken care of, I found a free clinic that would prescribe me, some meds and stuff. And, bless their heart, that was kind of the start of that self-care, that self-worth, that, I'm worthy of these things, that it's okay to take care of myself. And, and then finding that when you do, things get returned to you, so.
Well, it's amazing what you can do in 27 months. You just celebrated 2 years, and meanwhile, you've started Airwear Company, where you're creating recovery clothing. You're starting this Unloaded comedy act where you're inviting recovering addicts to be a part of something, and if they're talented enough to actually participate in it. Mm-hmm. You're a responsible, productive member of society that is, so far from who you were a little over 2 years ago. And it's an absolute miracle. And how's your relationship today with your kids?
It's still estranged, I guess to say. It's I've had recently, in the last few months, my son is contacted me, invited me to a football game down at OSU. That just floored me, and we kind of hung out and played some video games afterwards. And I've been able to see him a little bit off and on. My daughter is not quite ready to start that kind of relationship. We text a little bit, email a little bit here and there. I kind of emailed an apology, but just kind of like that initial apology, because I'm like, and I even said it in the letter, I'm like, I know this is not the end all by any means, but these are the things that I'm feeling, and I want to start, listing as far as, the amends I want to make. And, I don't know, I know that you're hurt. I know you're hurt tremendously, but I don't know exactly how you're hurt, but I'd love to work with you, to find out how, and to then, solve these things and build that relationship back up going forward. And we had a recent death on my ex-wife's side of the family. One of her aunts passed away. And so, when you're married to someone for 22 years, there's a lot of family, ties and stuff, even after a divorce. And so I should go, to the funeral. Well, my daughter contacted me and said, hey, we need to meet before the funeral. So I'm not sure I can be in the same room with you yet. So, okay, fair enough. So we met for lunch the day before the funeral, had a real nice talk. A lot of just catching up, I don't want to say small talk, but just catching up. And then towards the end, she's like, I'm not ready to, hang out yet. This is a good first step. We need to take things slow, kind of thing. So, that blanket, that rug got yanked out from under her pretty hard. And I left her, as the oldest child in the family, left her picking up a lot of pieces, financially, emotionally, physically. So yeah, there's a lot of pain there that we need to work through.
This is such an important part of this interview.
Mm-hmm.
I have, each episode gets about 6,000 listens,
Mm-hmm.
so there's a lot of people listening here, and there's so much wreckage that we do in our lives, especially when it comes to the children. Once you get sober, once you get clean, you want to run back out there and just try and just completely reclaim everything
Mm-hmm.
that you lost.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen overnight. It does not happen overnight. And you have to be the change. You have to, do the work required to you. And the toughest part for many of us is we got to leave it in God's hands. You have to leave it in God's hands. And that for some people is the absolute toughest part of it all. Knowing that as tough as it was to get clean and sober in the first place, all the work that it's taking you to get this far and the resistance from your children, it's a testament that the program is working so strongly in your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because to a certain degree, you're her dad, and there's going to be some entitlement that certain people would feel. But the recovery, if you're working a program, the entitlement gets crushed.
Yeah.
You have no entitlement. You fucked this up, and it's your job to do whatever it takes to repair it. And how quickly or how slowly it takes for that to happen is not on your time. All right, your only responsibility is to do the next right thing and allow God to work in His time for when things will be what we consider to be normal. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep. And that's I find that's one of the most difficult things to, as a numbers guy. If I needed to get my license back, I had to do certain things to get it back, and then boom, I got it back. If I had to get a job or had to type a resume or whatever the case may be, I would do what it took to do that, and I would see right away the fruits of that labor. This is mind-boggling. I mean, this is the most difficult thing to try and continuously. I'll go 2 or 3 weeks sending messages, every other day or every couple days or whatever the case may be, and nothing. And then one day, hey, what did you see about this? Or what about this? And then, oh, that's pretty cool. Or, and then you start, all those other messages are forgotten, but now there's dialogue, and so I tend to try to contact them through text a little bit more than a phone call. And maybe I should change that, but this is kind of the method we use right now. I feel that might be a little safer for them as opposed to, knock, knock, knock. Oh, Dad's at the door again. Kind of thing. I don't even want to talk to them, because there's things in their lives. I mean, I remember one day my daughter contacted me, and I was reading this message, and it was screaming. I mean, it was a text, but it was screaming off my phone. She was not happy because I did not teach them as kids, young adults, how to maintain their car with it, as far as checking tires and all this kind of stuff. Apparently my son had gotten a flat tire, and due to, negligence, letting it just go, it's kind of one of those kind of flat tires. It wasn't just like a nail or anything. So it affected her life because she was now walking to, do whatever. And she was pissed, and she let me have it, and good for her. At first my reaction was like, this is not related. This is I can't think of the term, but it's, basically the misconstrued, or whatever. It's not going the right direction. She's not upset, she's upset at the tire, but she's taking it out on me.
It's misdirection. Yes. It's misdirected.
Yeah.
Misdirected anger.
So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so that was my, initial reaction, but I knew better. I knew that, yes, I failed. That's one area that I failed. And there's going to be several others that we need to talk about. And so, that I feel in my recovery that I've done amazing in many areas. But I also know that in my recovery, I have opportunity to be amazing in other areas. There's things that need to be better. And I think that's just the whole life on life's terms type thing. Like you mentioned wreckage. I know there's a lot of wreckage still to clean up with the family. I know there's still wreckage to clean up financially. I'm doing what I can as I can, kind of thing. And they say, easy does it, they say at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that we need to remember that 27 months later, 13 years later, whatever the case may be. Sometimes you just need to refocus that and say, you know what, I'm doing okay. And yes, I would like to have this, at a different level, by now, but you can't do that to yourself. This counselor I was working with, she told me, she goes, never should on yourself. SHOULD.
Yep.
Never should on yourself. And I was like, wow, I like that one. And so, to me, it meant a lot because I did that for years.
Don't should on yourself.
Don't should on yourself. Make sure you pronounce it correctly.
All right, Mike. Well, listen, we're going to start closing down.
Okay.
And the way I like to close down is for the newcomer. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions about your early recovery, and I want you to respond with inspiring answers that we can share with our newcomers. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. Number 1, what was keeping you from getting clean or staying clean when you first got introduced to recovery?
Well, I wasn't ready. I talked a little bit about the fact that I hadn't hit a true rock bottom. I wasn't ready. So I did not grasp the severity of the situation that I was in or the difficult situation I put my, family in. For so long, there had been a safety net in my addiction. And I think that can be very subjective for many, just like the definition of rock bottom can be subjective.
Yes.
Everybody has their own. So like I mentioned before, I get into that pickle with addiction or with money, change addiction, always an out. And then somebody helped clean up the mess, and I didn't feel that impact. So when I finally went to an actual inpatient treatment center, it was more of okay, I will go. I will do this. And I was, but I didn't clean out everything, inside that I needed to. And it wasn't until I truly committed to removing all these defects, the sex, the gambling, find a solution for my mental health, quit practicing old behaviors of all this kind of negative stuff. And I think I changed that from most of my life was like, okay, what do I need to do to get by? Let's see where this takes me. And I think I finally made that turn off that path and turned it into, I'm going to do everything possible to go around, to go under, to go through, or just plain remove these obstacles between me and building a new life in recovery.
Absolutely. And, no question about it. There comes that moment where you're either in or you're out. But staying on that same path, there's no way you can maintain. There just isn't. All right. So number 2, at what point did you have a spiritual awakening, that aha moment in recovery, when you accepted that you were powerless over drugs and alcohol, but for the first time had developed the hope that you could recover?
I had looked at this question and put down some notes for an answer. But as we've talked today, I'm changing my answer. And it will be my final answer. No. But it's the moment I realized that I was powerless, I had a bout with kind of resurfacing with gambling while I was at the Oxford House. And it was significant enough that, I had to make some arrangements as far as, paying the house and stuff like that. So it kind of created a little hitch in my get along of my, momentum.
Right.
And I realized at that point that this is fragile. I am powerless. I end up in front of that machine. I end up at a strip club, or I end up, the dope man's house. I'm powerless, Fortunately, I was able to stay away from some of those places, but the gambling was, quote unquote, safe. And so it really set up a red flag for me. I took steps immediately to correct that issue. I actually sought out free gambling counseling and attended GA meetings. And I even set up a good friend to manage my money until I felt that I could handle it. And so all of these things in my mind were very humbling, and it was okay. I didn't fail, but I did stumble. And I think that I learned a lot from that. And again, I think it's just how fragile this really is, and how every day, and if you can't make it a day, you make it a minute. Get me through this minute and, get me on to the next thing. It will pass. This program is just laden with cliche after cliche. And I don't like to use the word cliche. Many of us do. I even do. But these are far more than cliches. I mean, this is how it's done. This is a lot of people like to be the one in the meeting that can spew the most cliches, if you will. But when somebody is really telling you that this too shall pass, do it for one day at a time, down to 1 minute at a time, whatever you need to do the next right thing, reach out, call a sponsor, all these things, that's the way. You know what I mean? That's not a cliche to me. Those are instructions.
For all of us, they're all cliches and they're all true. They're all there for a reason. And it's a great aha moment. And it's also like a sigh of relief that this is how my slippery slope went, that I did gambling, or, maybe I went to a strip club, or maybe I did something, but I didn't go back out and do meth.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's the drug aspect of it from where we're at is what is the most difficult to come back from. The other ones will give you that moral dilemma. Mm-hmm. You get that feeling of guilt, shame, and remorse. Mm-hmm. And you can quickly reel yourself back in before ultimately it would take you to the dope, man. Because all that nasty stuff that you do, the sneakiness that happens behind the scenes, if you don't talk to your sponsor about it, or if you don't acknowledge that it's an issue, it could lead you back, to the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
But man, I tell you, with me, food is the thing with me, man. Like big time. That's the one where I can't have a one Hershey's Kiss. One Hershey's Kiss is a bag of Hershey's Kisses. You know what I mean? Like it's just, and it's stuck in my brain, right? Like it's just right there over and over again. And, I catch myself doing the same thing where I'm going, wow, man, I'm always going to be an addict. Like 13 years later, I still do things where I'm like, man, I'm always going to be an addict. And then I stop myself and I go, yep. You're always going to be an addict. Let's just try and remember that.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. I even tried I have a food issue as well, and I recently worked a food addicts program, and I really enjoyed it. I say enjoyed because I eventually stopped, and unfortunately, but it was interesting looking back as I lost 50 pounds in just a few months. And it was you're doing the right thing. You're not eating sugar, flour, processed foods. Basically.
Yes, correct.
And then you have kind of a limit of other things, but you can still eat quite a bit. You have to be organized. But as I was slowly falling off this wagon, I was trying to hide it, and there happens to be a teenage girl that lives here in the house, and she likes to bake. And I noticed that she wasn't, here's the addict in me, she wasn't cutting the brownies into the number of brownies that was just being dug out of the pan. Well, what better for an addict to be able just to dig a little bit more out of the pan? Who can measure that, right? And so I would dig out of this pan and, jam it in my mouth and then, chew it down. Well, one day I didn't realize exactly how dry and thick these brownies were. Took a big chunk, threw it in my mouth. I heard what I thought was somebody coming into the kitchen. So I tried to swallow that down. I literally choke. I was like, oh, I'm like, oh my God, this is how it ends. And I'm like, what do I do? And then it worked its way out. And I was like, okay, and I was able to chew it and then, survive. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so a few days later, it took me a few days before I could admit it, but a few days later, I was like, here, guess what? And they thought that was the funniest thing ever, and I'm like, here we, I was laughing at my, falling off the wagon type thing. And but it was, and like you said, it points to the fact that my name is Mike and I'm an addict, and
Period.
Yeah. Period.
End of story.
Right.
That is a fucking great story. Oh, this is the end right here, man. I fucking survived meth and homelessness and fucking starvation in the streets. Right. And fucking Brownie took me out.
Yeah. She put too much peanut butter in the fucking brownie and it took me out.
Oh, dude. That's fucking awesome. Oh, that's comedy, dude. Comedy. I love it. All right, moving on. Do you have a favorite book that you would recommend to a newcomer?
I've never ever really been a reader. I think I made it all through high school without finishing a book.
Same here.
Yeah, if it wasn't for Cliff Notes, or the smart girl next to me, But saying that, I think the book that's impacted me the most has been the NA book.
Yep. Basic Text.
Yeah, Basic Text. I think I've listened to more of it than I've read myself, but that would if I had to pick a book, that would be it. As far as what inspires me to read is I'm not sure if it qualifies as a book, but it's these online recovery blogs.
Yeah, absolutely.
People sharing their stories in different ways and different you can connect with this person, or you get into a few lines of this person. You're like, you know what? I'm not feeling it. Go to this one. Okay, there it is. It's just almost like a meeting in the fact that you take what you want and you leave the rest. It's that quick version of someone's journey, filled with experience, strength, and hope. And I call that a sober dose. And it's one of the shirts that we make. So it's called Sober Dose. And if I may, I like to read a letter I just got last night from I say customer, but now he's a brother in recovery.
Bring it.
Can I read it? Okay.
Absolutely.
It says, and he's got a picture of himself wearing airwear that says Sober Dose. This just in. I know most of you have heard of an overdose, characterized by different symptoms depending on the drug that's been used. What I've never heard of before, though, is it's totally opposite. You see, apparently, once you quit using all mind-altering substances, work the steps with the sponsor, walk back through your past and dig up all the old wounds and put in the work to heal them, you slowly begin to transform. A new design for living makes sense. The relationship you develop with your higher power guides you along your path. Your feelings return and come alive. Shit gets real. Next thing you know, the promises start coming true. People start coming back into your life, and before you know it, wham, a quickened heart rate, warm feeling through your body, uncontrollable laughter and smiles, random happy tears fill your eyes at the strangest times, and this huge upwelling of gratitude. Yes, my friends, it's called a sober dose, and I believe it's a wonderful thing.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I saw that, and I just got, I got goosebumps. And I thought to myself, this guy needs to do the marketing for all of my shirts and tell the story behind each one of my corny little sayings and tongue-in-cheek type things, and just help bring this message forward, because my goodness, I could not have said that any better. I mean, all I came up with, what I just read to you, and he hit it out of the park. I was so happy to read that.
There's so much talent. There's so much talent in the rooms, and you have to be so resourceful and you have to be so talented to survive what we survive.
Yep.
Finding ways and means to get more, requires a talent, it requires a skill. And when we get sober and we get clean, that doesn't go away. It's ingrained in us. And when you hear someone passionately talk about recovery in such a manner, it's like, listen to this person describe what it's like to be clean and sober today. And it's so eloquent, it's so beautiful. And once you find your way through the mire of despair, these amazing people emerge, and here we are.
Yep.
Here we are carrying the message, man. Powerful. That is a powerful letter.
That was.
I love those. I get those. You know, it's fuel that's like, I know why I'm doing this, and this goes in the recovery bank account.
Yep.
And it's the fuel I need to, just get back out there and do this thing, stronger and harder than ever.
Yep.
Love it.
What a blessing.
Totally. So number 4, 2 more questions. What is the best suggestion you have ever received?
Like we all have, I think we've there's been a lot, we've changed a lot, but to narrow it down to one is a short little story. I met this gentleman in the homeless shelter, and he happened to bunk right next to me. And over the course of a few days, I was fortunate just to only be there for 10 days. But over the course of that time, I overheard, story after story about his pain and misery and multiple failed attempts to quit using, change his life. I could literally see how broken he was, both physically and then, through listening to him spiritually. We never spoke. I mean, we had a bunk next to each other. We never spoke, though, until the last night I was there. We're down in a reading room. And we were chatting a little bit about my new opportunity because, I was taking that leap, to get out of town and start. And so talked about the new opportunity, talked about getting out of the game, quote unquote, and how difficult it was. And as we wrapped up our conversation, I'll never forget this. He said he wanted to give me something. And he said, he reached into his pocket and he pulled out his hand in a closed fist. And then he took my hand and he acted like he put something in it. And as he did this, he says, "This is your last chance." He goes, "Don't open your hand. Just put it in your pocket and take it with you." He goes, "My prayer for you is that you will never have to see what that last chance looks like."
Oh, dude, You're killing me, man.
Yeah. I was like, chicken skin. I was like, oh my gosh, that was something else. I would never expect coming out of his mouth. You know what I mean? But again, higher power puts that person in front of you, even if it's that for that short period of time, there's something that you needed to hear, something you needed to see, or maybe even something you needed to do or say. There's a reason.
Wow, dude, you've got more God shots, than I can
tell you what, man.
Dude, seriously, man.
I cannot win a lottery ticket to save my life, but these are they got my luck elsewhere. So,
buddy, you don't know how wrong you are.
Right?
You don't know how wrong you are.
That's right.
You've got a pocket full of winning lottery tickets, man.
Yeah.
Oof, that is powerful, dude. Powerful. I love it. Okay, and number 5, if you could give a newcomer only one suggestion, what would it be?
Again, you look at I look at my journey, and there's so many things you want to and this, like sending your kid off to camp, and don't forget to brush and all that kind of stuff. The number one thing, if it could be one thing, would be change your playmates, your playgrounds, and your playthings. I found this to be a crucial part of my recovery. I was able to remove myself from the negative surroundings, negative people. And by doing so, I really felt that helped me from falling back into old habits, because one day, it takes one case of the fuckets and you know who to call. You know where to go. Yep. It's all, I know the dope man lives everywhere, but for me, that created one extra level of security, I guess. One more barrier that I have to help me prevent reaching out to somebody that I didn't even know in a different town. So, and it also prevented, buddies from pressuring me into anything. So I moved far enough away that I didn't have any buddies, and until I met my family at the Oxford House. And another thing that by doing this, I didn't realize that fell into this change your playmates, playthings, and playgrounds was my family. Looking back, The physical distance, along with being estranged, actually benefited me in my early recovery, meaning that I've seen many people get wrapped up in the same old, trying to make changes in their life. I felt this was a very important time in my life, and I felt that I rose to that challenge by finding new ways to cope with issues that haunted me my whole life. As we discussed, I tackled this and tackled that and tackled the next thing, and those changes helped me to get where I am today. But I see addict after addict, people in recovery trying to make changes while they're still sitting in the same, shit.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I'm in a house full of drug addicts, but I'm going to be sober. Nothing changes if nothing changes. You know what I mean? You can't just will yourself to, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. You got to get out of Dodge. If you got to put your kids down for some time, do what you can to, I know not everybody can do this kind of stuff, but why can't they at the same time? You know what I mean? It just comes down to am I going to really take those steps to save my life? Am I going to be committed enough to change my playmates, my playgrounds, my playthings? If you're not, then maybe this isn't for you. Can people make it through? Yeah. I mean, just, there's the whole 12-step versus the not 12-step. There's the, book versus not book. There's all these things. Everybody has their own way to get there. But there's also these paths that are paved in gold that are much easier. And many people have gone and succeeded. And to take some of these lessons and to apply them to your life can really, really help you be successful, especially for the folks that continually fall, and relapse. What do you need to change to make it successful? Take a hard look at these things.
Absolutely. If nothing changes, nothing changes. And that's something that I have heard year after year after year. It's always the same thing. Are you willing to go to any length? It was the question that was posed to me by my sponsor when I first got into the rooms. Mm-hmm. He said, are you willing to go to any length? I said, yes. And he said, do you know what that means? And I said, no.
You're honest.
I said, no. And he goes, are you willing to let God into your life? And I said, I'm willing to do whatever it is that you asked me to do. Yeah. He goes, well, that's the right answer. Let's get started. Nice. And it was as simple as that. It was as simple as that, man. My best thinking got me to that predicament, got me to a relapse, got me, lost my wife, lost my business, was a complete lunatic, a dysfunctional member of society. And, I had reached a point where I knew that I had nothing to offer anyone or myself, and like I said, like you just said, people, places, playthings, you have to change it all. You have to literally walk away from everything. I did that. You did that. I know that's exactly what worked for me, and it's exactly what I tell guys that are new in recovery. They just relapsed or something, and I'm like, dude, what can you do differently this time that you didn't do last time? I mean, if you really want to do this, you want to be successful. Yeah. What is it that you need to do differently this time? Ask yourself the tough question and do it. Yep. I couldn't agree more, Mike.
Yep. That's what I had to do, and it's been a blessing to be able to do that and get to where I am today.
Beautiful. Well, Mike, dude, what a story, man.
Hey, thank you.
What a story.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I apologize for the all-nighter. Sorry, not sorry, right?
This is your story.
Wow. It's to be a mini-series, right?
Well, there's a lot to it, man. There's a lot of facets to it, and there's a lot in there that our listeners are going to be able to resonate with, and that's what's important, man. Real stories from real people who are here today to share about the wreckage of their past and how their life is so much more, how their life has changed, is different, and is innumerably better than it was ever before.
Definitely.
All right, folks, we have now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us. And as we say here in Costa Rica, pura vida.
Pura vida.
Thank you for joining us on the SHAIR Recovery Podcast. To check out the show notes page on this interview or to thank our guests for sharing their story, go to www.theshairpodcast.com. While you're on the website, don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter to stay up to date on the latest news, podcasts, and interviews. Want to be one of our guests and share your story? Then go to our website and click on the Share Your Story button. We share our inspiring recovery stories every Tuesday, so subscribe to our show on iTunes or Stitcher Radio to get your free weekly download. We'll see you then.